All right, welcome back. This is video part 3. It's just picking up right after part 2. Remember, there is no part 1 because we covered that in class. So this one should be pretty short. We finished off on the diencephalon. It consists of these mainly 4 parts. There's some other things in there too, like pituitary gland, but a lot of these are going to be more thoroughly covered later on in the year when we get to the endocrine system. But for our purposes, let's talk about mainly these 3. The thalamus gland. The thalamus is the largest part of the diencephalon. Remember, this is kind of in that middle portion of the brain, right beneath the cerebrum. This plays a key role in motor activities and memory as well. Now, these are all fairly primitive type parts of the brain, especially compared to the cerebrum, particularly the frontal lobe of the cerebrum. So when we talk about motor activities, some of your fine motor skills are found here. It's why you might can take your thumb and touch all the tips of that same finger that you're on, touching your pointer finger, middle finger, ring finger, and then pinky finger or little finger, and just kind of using that fine motor skill. So things like typing, writing with a pencil, those are motor skills that the thalamus really helps in. Also, some memory components, some of your basic memories, not some of those memories that are very tied to emotional things, but more like remembering things like the alphabet, or remembering how certain things, the texture of certain things. Okay, so not really high, not, oh, this smells like my grandmother's perfume, I sure love her. Nothing like that. The hypothalamus, named for its position, hypo means below, so below the thalamus. It has this nickname, the main control center of the body. And the reason it has this is because the hypothalamus is super useful in maintaining homeostasis. Of course, homeostasis is the state of normalcy, okay? A state of normalcy. We all want to be in homeostasis. Our body craves it. All living organisms want to be homeostatic. Now, that can be different for whatever that organism is, but we want to maintain this state of perfect balance, okay? So are we thirsty? Our hypothalamus deals with that. It gives our body a signal of, hey, we're a little low on water, might be time to get some. So it can send out signals to parts of our brain, causing us to think, my mouth is dry. It can show us that. Or hunger. It can send, it realizes the body may be low on certain nutrients. It can send signals to the brain going, when's the last time you ate? Or signals to even to the stomach saying it's time to growl. It's time to show that, hey, there's a need for food. Some emotional responses, especially our knee-jerk reactions or our reactions to things that really set you off, goes into this hypothalamus. This is one of those reasons you may feel like, you get very angry at just some certain thing. Maybe somebody says something that before it's really triggered you, makes you angry. You may have that knee-jerk reaction to get mad at them. Now, you may stop at that moment. You don't have to give in to that feeling. It's just that feeling of emotion at that point. You may think, they maybe don't know the whole situation. So then you bring your frontal lobe of reasoning and logic into the situation. Well, it may not understand exactly what they're saying, so I'm not going to jump down their throat right now, okay? That knee-jerk, maybe some sadness. That makes me sad to hear, and then you stop and think about it. Well, that's not really the same thing as, something previous that made me sad. Also, your sleep and wake cycles are here. You've probably heard of a chemical called melatonin. The hypothalamus releases melatonin to help us fall asleep and stay asleep, and also to wake up. So this also plays a role with like light, how our it's called circadic rhythms or circadic signals or cycles. How light, once we are sensing with our eyes that there's light in a room or in our environment of sleeping, that we might need to wake up. Also, things like heart rate and body blood pressure, as well as your body temperature. Your hypothalamus, it doesn't do a whole lot of higher level things, but it really is the main control center for the body in keeping the body alive. So it's a pretty good nickname. It fits pretty well. The hypothalamus. Please kind of make note of all those things that it maintains or helps to work on. Really maintain homeostasis through keeping all those things at a balance. The epithalamus, most bottom part or lowest part, is also the farthest back. That's why dorsal. It really helps also regulate the sleep cycles and as well as your mood. And remember, this is a primitive mood. It's not a well thought out emotional response thing in your mood. You can be having a bad day, But when you really stop and think about why am I having a bad day, your frontal lobe really helps you dictate that and understand that. Okay, this is all very primitive type stuff, low-level thinking. Another part is called your brainstem. This is where your spinal cord and your cerebrum connect. There's three main parts I want us to look at. Don't know why I did that, but I want us to look at these three main parts in the brain stem. Okay. First part is the midbrain. The midbrain, as you see it in green there on that diagram, it is kind of the middle portion of the brain. It's a reflex center, so it's kind of almost it's like that train station that it receives signals from your spinal cord, which are also linked to your peripheral nerves, of course. It takes them and it kind of causes a reflex, whether it sends that signal up to the cerebrum and you give it a little more thought, or it's just that knee-jerk, crap, there's a spider on my foot, or there's a snake crossing my path, let me get the heck out of here, okay? Your midbrain can kind of hit that midbrain, receive that signal, and then send out the signal to move or run away, okay? And then you might give it some thought and says, well, I could stomp on that spider. Your midbrain is that reflex. The pons area, this is a relay station. Okay, that's the biggest thing that it does. Really, the only thing that it does is it's a relay between the peripheral nervous system and the cerebrum. So it receives input from your senses, most likely, and then it sends it to the certain part of the brain that it needs to. Okay, it's you may feel something. And the relay will go into the pons, and then it will send a signal to whatever part of your brain needs to process it. The medulla oblongata. If you've ever watched The Water Boy with Adam Sandler, you've heard this term before. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the professor that looked like Colonel Sanders of KFC fame was talking about an alligator being mad, and he was saying the medulla oblongata. This is not factual at all. It's just they probably use it because it's so much fun to say, medulla oblongata. This is the bottom part of the brainstem, and it controls the most basic. We call it visceral activities, okay? The basic physical activities of staying alive, okay? There is no anger responses here. It is the center for your cardiac control, okay? So if your heart is what keeps it in beat, it keeps it at a constant rhythm. So a lot of involuntary actions going on here. Also, your respiratory keeps you kind of breathing without having to stop and think about it. Of course, we can decide I want to hold my breath or I want to take a deep breath, but that's really controlling all the muscle and soft tissue structures that lead up to the lungs, as we'll kind of learn about that later on. But this keeps us in that breathing rhythm that we typically go through during the day. It's why you're sitting there breathing right now. Now you're thinking about it, so you're kind of controlling it a little bit, okay? So the medulla oblongata, think about the most basic staying alive activities. It's not what the Water Boy taught us, not at all. If we had to look at a part, we don't cover it in this in our stuff, but the amygdala is a part of the brain that really controls anger. So if you want to go back and make sure Adam Sandler knows what he's talking about, the amygdala is probably what the alligator taps into when he's so angry. And I think that's the last portion of these set of notes. So you'll want to use parts 2 and 3 to take quiz 2. Okay, quiz 2 is where parts 2 and 3 really come into play. All right, part 3 we'll pick up there. Parts 2 and 3. Part 4 we'll pick up there on the next video.